in the dairy farms. And the first presentation will be by Mr. Francesco Branchi with the title Analysis of Competitiveness of Production Structures in the Post-2015 Scenario. But before leaving the floor to Francesco, I would like to make a very quick comment. I know we're already late, but please bear with me. So, keeping accounts, monitoring profitability of production, keeping costs under control, these are all very important topics. And, unfortunately, our farmers are not experts in this field. Angelo told me that the model that he has developed can also be used for benchmarking. Actually, it is a model to analyze competitiveness. Right, this is one step forward, and benchmarking in the farming sector is practically non-existent. So I believe that we're all looking forward to listening about this model, the way how it works, and the possible consequences for farmers. Thank you very much.
Buongiorno.
Good morning. We're getting close to April the 1st of 2015, when the quotas are going to be eliminated from Europe, the milk quotas. As far as what is going to take place after this date, we have to first dwell on this sector, and we have to consider the competitiveness of European dairy farms. And so this is why today I'm going to make an overview of a certain number of dairy farms in Europe, and to see the results that have just resulted from one of our recent projects, which focuses on the performance and returns of some dairy farms in northern Italy. Should you have, of course, any comments vis-à-vis what I'm going to say today, you can, of course, contact us via this specific email address, and you can attest also what you think. But let me start to see what is taking place now in Europe. What is the current scenario? So I want to show you this graph that compares the results of some European countries in terms of number of animals per dairy farm, and based also on the surface available to each dairy farm. And you see also the specific number of cows, and what you can notice is this ranking. First we have the Netherlands, and second is Italy, then Ireland, then we have Germany, France and Poland. So these are from Eurostat 2010. Should there be any updates, you're going to find these online within our web page. But let me go into the details of Italy, and let's compare Italy to the other countries. So in this graph, you can see in blue, this is the number of dairy farms, divided also by its size, while in yellow you have the number of animals of dairy cows within each dairy farm. So this snapshot shows us a scenario that differs between Italy and Germany. While in Germany you have higher numbers for those, let's say, of dairy farms over 30,000 hectares. In Italy, we have most of them are between 2 and 20 hectares of extension. We can compare them against the figure for the Netherlands and France. And finally, we can also focus on the most productive Italian regions, Piedmont on the left, Veneto, that is more similar to the average Italian figure, the Lombardy, and Emilia-Romagna, which is similar to the German scenario. So having set the starting snapshot, of course, what is going to happen after the elimination of the quotas is going to change based on the production, which is based on the production for each single cow. And so in analyzing these two specific components, what comes out are some limits that we may have in terms of production, in the number of animals, because we have the directive on nitrates, and which may limit the number of quotas animals, and the geographical area, the weather conditions where the dairy farm is set. As far as the production is concerned, we have the price of feedstuff, we have genetics and animal management. And hence the competitiveness of dairy farms is essentially based on the price of milk on one hand, and on the performance and costs of the dairy farm on the other. So this is why CLAL in July of 2012 has started with this new Sistema Stalla project, the goal of which instead of analyzing not the returns of the dairy farms, but their competitiveness, and to compare their competitiveness with other European and world realities. So I carried out this project together with my colleague Elisabetta, with Roberto Preti, who's a vet from Milan, and especially with dairy farmers. We selected a sample of dairy farmers that focused their attention on performance and costs. And so we focused on excellence and not on average Italian values. So we focused on farms at very high level. Now, to understand the functioning of dairy farms and to collect the data for 2012, we met these dairy farmers within their dairy farms, and we established also a good collaboration with them. And I have to thank also the Mantua Dairy Farmers Association, because they also gave us our headquarters to have these meetings, and we had many meetings with these dairy farmers. But I must thank especially the dairy farmers, because of course they were able to share their knowledge with us. Now on the map you can see the dairy farms. In blue it's the overall size of the herd, while in orange we have the number of lactating animals. In yellow we have the production for Grana Padano, in green those that use milk for Parmigiano Reggiano. In this slide we can see these dairy farms ranked by number of lactating cows. The first bar, the colored bar, is the number of animals in lactation. The color varies depending on what the milk is used for. So in blue is for retail milk, in yellow that used for Grana Padano, in green milk used to make Parmigiano Reggiano. Let me now focus on the performance and then returns and costs. So as for the performance, we have a mean production per cow, which varies between 8,500 and 12,400 kilograms. The average is 9.7. Now, if we take 9,700, if we compare this to the results of some other European countries that have a high production per cow, we see that this sample goes above the data of these other countries. Now, the age at first calving is fundamental for the performance and for cost reductions. We compare age at first calving with the country of Israel, because Israel is usually considered as a good comparison for Italian dairy farmers. And the mean value of our sample is of 24.4 months. Now, to compare the dairy farms one against the other, we have made this new graph. So each colored surface represents one single dairy farm. The corners of this show on the axis the results that they achieved for each of these fundamental items. So we have production, we have the content of fat and protein in the milk, the data until first parting, the replacement figure, the number of lactations, and the dairy farms that entered into the study are shown here on the right. They're ranked by size, and by selecting on each one you can add them or remove them from the graph. And then if you go with the mouse on the surface itself, you can visualize the numerical values for that specific dairy farm. You can also group together the dairy farms depending on what they use their milk for. So you can compare the ones that make retail milk, those that make only milk for Grana Padano, or those that make milk for Parmesan cheese. So as a summary, I can say that the performance that you can see in these graphs confirms the excellence of the sample that we considered and their capacity in being able to compete with other European realities. Now let me come to returns. So this is quite simple, because we focused on mostly on the sale of milk. So most of the returns of the dairy farms come from the sale of milk, and this is in percentage vis-à-vis total returns. So you see, for example, it's also what quality means for these dairy farms on terms of returns. So this weight of the quality of milk goes from 0 to 4.4. Also what they obtain from selling animals or the selling of male cows. Another component for returns can be the sale of replacement animals, and in this graph, which shows the makeup of returns, you see in red what they get from selling heifers, for example. In this case, we see also the returns that they can have also from selling energy, for example, or for other components. Now, since the European agricultural policy is something very important for European dairy farmers, we also assess the weight of the funds coming from Europe. So this is especially important with those dairy farms that have a number of lactating animals under 200. If we take instead the dairy farms with more than 200 lactating cows, we developed this simulation which visualize what may happen in the future if the funds coming from the European Union are going to decrease in the future. And so we have some shows what's going to happen if we remove funds. If there's going to be a 10% reduction of the funds coming from the European Union, there's going to be an impact of 0.52% on overall returns, which is equivalent to the feed being used to bring 7 heifers from birth to the first calving. If you have a 20% reduction, it corresponds to the cost of semen, and if you have a 30% reduction, this corresponds to the feedstuff necessary for 16 complete lactations. Again, analyzing returns, so especially these come from the sale of milk, and a good management can, of course, also allow a good return from the sale of replacement animals. Let's now focus on costs. The costs have been calculated percentage-wise vis-à-vis the total returns. This so as to have a homogeneous comparison between the dairy farms, and so as to be able to analyze how each single cost does have an impact on overall returns. Of course, the cost analysis is complex. We have excluded amortizations and taxes, and we notice that the biggest cost is represented by the feedstuff being bought, here shown in yellow, which is compared to the other costs, so medical costs, the renting of the farmland, and the cost of semen, which corresponds to about 1% of the total costs of the dairy farm, but which is fundamental so as to improve the genetics of the herd. Now, since the main cost component is feedstuff, we decided to analyze, together with Roberto Preti, this specific tool. This is a graph which allows us to make an assessment of the impact of the cost of feedstuff. Now, in this graph, you can follow on a monthly basis the market trend values of concentrated feed used in dairy farms. And the graph shows you a simulated feed, 70% based on corn silage, which we use as an example for the energy feed, while 30% is made up by soy, which is representative of the protein content of the feed. So next to the graph, we have also added a second table, which shows the cost of proteins depending on the source of proteins, so with the different prices of these sources. And you may notice that the dairy farms within our sample have exploited this, because sometimes they substituted part of the soy with other types of fodder that they could buy at lower cost. So let me finish this analysis with also the energy component, meaning energy in terms of electric power. We have this table, which has been elaborated thanks to AgriVenture Intesa Sanpaolo, that gave us its estimates for the price of energy for future years. And we noticed that the price of electric power should decrease in the year 2013, but in the year 2014 it should still be lower as against the costs for 2012. In the same way, we have this other table. Again, I have to thank AgriVenture for this, AgriVenture Sanpaolo, which is the cost of fuels and lubricants used by dairy farmers, especially for farming of the farmable land. And we made this analysis that has been accepted by the dairy farmers, and of course they renew their support of this project. So all the pages, all that you have seen here in this brief overview is already available online as of this morning within some specific dedicated pages. So this is the CLAL homepage. So as of today, there's going to be a link on the homepage So by clicking on this specific link, you have access to this main page, which gives us the overall benchmark. And I did not show this to you this morning, but it shows you the overall sample. And so on this page, you can start making a comparison at Italian, European, and world level. The page is going to be translated into 7 languages. And you can visualize, of course, the data. And if we can go on the graph, this is the performance graph. So also this performance graph that we saw previously is available online, and so each farmer throughout the world can input their own figures within a table that is located within the web page. I'm going to show it to you now here. This is an example of the table. So every dairy farmer can input their data, the number of animals in lactations, for example, that they have in the dairy farm, the number of dry cows, the overall production based on a yearly basis, the fat content, protein content of their milk, age at first calving, heifers between 10 and 22 months within the dairy farm to count the number of replacement years, number of lactations, for example, per year, and so forth. So by clicking here on this green key, their dairy farm appears on the graph, and they can compare their results with what the other dairy farmers do. And I want to conclude by thanking dairy farmers for all that they have allowed us to do, and also for their future commitment. This is a new project that we have to develop together with them. I want to thank also the Canini Dairy Farm, because they gave us the possibility visiting also their dairy farm, and now you can see that we have a streaming connection with their dairy farm. And now the floor to Alberto Cortesi, who is one of the participants to this project. Thank you.
Grazie. Grazie, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Francesco, and congratulations. Francesco has a university degree in mathematics. Until a few months ago, he didn't know what a cow was, and I have to say he has managed his presentation very, very well. Right, let's now leave the floor to a farmer who's part of the whole system. I know that he's been one of the first one to support CLAL's idea. And I would like to stress 2 points. 97 quintals of milk. Well, this is the average that shows that the Italian farmers are doing very well. In this sample, at least. Yes, in this sample. And then there is another point I would like to stress, that is the model has been supported and confirmed, in the sense that you have submitted your data to farmers and they have confirmed them. Right, without further ado, let's leave the floor to Mr. Alberto Cortesi, who will talk about the optimization of costs and will present the example of his farm. Good morning. This morning I'm representing here the group of farmers participating in this project, and on their behalf I would like to thank Francesco and all the CLAL staff, but specifically I would like to thank Mr. Angelo Rossi for his farsightedness and his enthusiasm. A few historical hints to my farm, which has been managed by our company in Ronco-Ferrara in the province of Mantua for more than 300 years, and since 1990 I am the owner of the company. In 1990, my father and uncle moved from 28 to approximately 50 cows and built our stalls. Later on, a second stall was built, about 100 cows, which was then updated and modernized. And in 2004, we built our last stalls, which is for heifers. The milk we produce is used for the production of grana padano, cheese. And the management has always been oriented towards efficiency. So we do not aim at increasing the number of heads, we aim at increasing efficiency. And a big change occurred in 1998 when our company took on the feed milk system that allows us to check in real time the production trend in the stall, in the farm. This gives us all necessary data to make the best decisions. This is our breed of cows, Holstein, and it is a purity breeding with internal selection only. I've tried some crosses, but this was not successful. I have to say that I'm very keen on selective breeding. I personally follow fertilization processes and the selection of bulls, and we have to say that we have achieved excellent results. The picture you saw before, or you're still seeing now actually, is a symbol of my farm, because this cow has produced 1,350 quintals of milk in our farm. Our consistent search for improvements in management means looking for animal welfare consistently. This is very expensive in terms of labor costs and infrastructures, but results are good, and every year we can sell at least 30 cows or pregnant heifers. Feeding is the number one cost in our management, and I produce all my feed internally. Alfalfa, both dry and ensiled, obtained from approximately 40 hectares. Corn, ground, ensilate, silage, another 50 hectares. We have the mix of forage in the winter of wheat and oat. 2/3 of our surface is located, and notwithstanding the high cost of rents, approximately 750 euros per hectare, and notwithstanding the significant commitment which is requested, especially for irrigation, I am sure that both today and in the future it is necessary to maintain a balance between the estate and the number of cows. We are in keeping with the existing rules as far as nitrates are concerned. The European community has standard 214 requiring a 5-year rotation, and we're compliant with this as well. We buy soybean flour as well as maize flour outside, so this is not directly produced in our company. We have 3 employees that spend 85% of their time in the farm, and the remaining part of the time is spent for the agricultural business. And then I have my wife, who takes care of the administrative issues and bureaucracy. So you never know whether new rules are going to come out, and you always have to check for your compliance with the existing rules. 2012 has been a very difficult year, similar to 2009, notwithstanding the fact that the price of milk in Lombardy, viewed from the European context, can actually be regarded to be acceptable. But this has been a very difficult year because costs have soared. Specifically, the cost of feed, the cost of soybeans and maize, the cost of electricity and gas oil, and because of taxes that have more than doubled. At the end of 2011, we have installed a photovoltaic energy production system, 60 nominal kilowatts power, and almost all the energy produced is internally used. We believe that in 6 years we will break even with our investment. And this has been the only investment that is not directly linked to our farming activity. As far as the future is concerned, as soon as our financial resources will allow this, I would like to buy a stall for dry cows for the freshening period in order to cut down and reduce the so-called transition stress. And this will have a permanent bedding system and will try to provide cows with plenty of space. Well, I believe that during this period, cows really do need space, and this is a crucial moment because it affects a cow's productive and reproductive performance. The result of our investments, the most expensive of which was related to milk quotas, 11,000 tons have been bought in terms of milk quotas, and this has given its results. We have an annual production of approximately 1,900 tons per year, with 3.6% of fat and 3.3% of proteins, with an average production per cow of 11,000 kilograms per year, which means 35 kilograms of milk per day for each milked cow, and a feed conversion rate of 1.5 kilograms of milk for each dry matter kilogram per cow. As far as fertility is concerned, on average, the period from conception to calving is 120 days, and within 150 days, 80% of cows are pregnant, with an age at first calving of 24.5 months on average. So this is my farm, and this is my way to optimize costs and improve management. Thank you very much for your attention. In this final picture, you can see my family, because my farm, like most Italian farms, is a family-owned and family-managed farm. Thank you.
Grazie, Alberto.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Well, on behalf of the group I'm representing here today, I am very proud to give to Francesco the mathematician with this farming degree. It is an ad honorem farming degree that we want to give him because he so quickly learned how things work in our sector. So this is actually a specialistic degree in farming, cow farming specifically. Congratulations, Francesco. You are now part of a very important community, the farming community, a fundamental community that plays a fundamental role in our society, especially today with this crisis and in a moment when agriculture is back to the foreground. And talking about agriculture,